I grew up at a time when religion was your private business. Yes, my family dragged me off in pilgrimages and took me to temples, but there was no particular need to talk about it because everybody was entitled to their own faith, their own belief, their own practice. I mentioned this for the first time in a book in India from Midnight to the Millennium, over a couple of pages only, in reaction to what had happened at that point to the Babri Masjid in '92 and the riots that followed and all of that, and the rise of Hindutva, which deeply troubled me. I was living abroad at the time. I was intimately following events in India. It's only after I came back to India, entered Indian politics and public life, and saw what the BJP and its assorted members of the Parivar were doing to use my precious faith as a political instrument for their own advancement, that I began to really get troubled and angry about it. And so, why I'm a Hindu was very much a political reiteration of my beliefs at some length as a repudiation of Hindutva, the political doctrine, which I believe is actually a profound betrayal of Hinduism. My Hinduism has come from extensive readings, not only from worship, because, you know, as Swami Vivekananda was this great exponent of Hinduism in the English language, and I must admit, I don't read, I can physically read the words in Sanskrit, but I can't understand them.
You've read the Upanishads, right?
I've read translations of the Upanishads in English, I've read translations of commentaries on the Gita and many other works in English. There are very good translations and not so good translations available of pretty much every major sacred text. Not everything, but certainly when you realize that even Adi Shankara in 1000 AD had so many texts to deal with that he confined himself to a certain limited number of books as what he was essentially putting across as essential Hinduism. That's one of the great strengths of Hinduism. There's an eclectic range of beliefs, philosophies, ideas out there, including materialism and atheism, are part of the accepted schools of Hindu philosophy. And all that Hinduism says is you choose your way of belief. People don't often realize that the original idea of the Hindu faith of Godhead was of the Nirguna Brahman. The Brahman, the divine, without qualities, without form, without shape, without gender, very much like the Islamic idea of God. But the rishis realized over hundreds of years of practice that this wasn't working because people needed something more tangible. People started worshipping rivers and trees and mountains. So that's when the Hindu thinkers and philosophers came up with the idea of the Saguna Brahman, divinity with qualities. But precisely because, unlike other faiths, they said very bluntly and realistically, no one knows what shape or form or gender or anything else the divine has. You are free to imagine the divine in any way that you wish. Which meant that if you want to think of the divine as an 8-armed woman riding a tiger, Durga, you're welcome to do so. If you want to think of the divine or want to focus your worship on a pot-bellied man with an elephant head, Ganapati, Ganesh, you're free to do so. And by the same logic, if you want to imagine the divine as a bleeding man suffering on a cross, that is also acceptable. And that's something that Swami Vivekananda in his lectures would constantly make this point, that ultimately this was what Hinduism was about.